Welcome everyone. Today is October the 18th, 2024, and this is going to be my final Survival Seeds 2024 video. So I'm over here at the one part of my greenhouse. So what I did is I picked out all my herbs that I wasn't able to get into 5-gallon buckets this year. I was just overwhelmed with so many other things. So I brought them in here, and hopefully they'll overwinter and they'll just come back up next year. And then next year I'll put them in a 5-gallon bucket. So hopefully this works, because then they will already have an established root system and they should be good. Something that I heard was that if you want your plants to successfully overwinter, it's important that they go to seed. I don't know if that's true or not, but I'm not taking chances. So I didn't harvest anything. And most of the things got planted way too late in the season because I didn't have the manure for the soil. I had nothing to fill buckets with. It was a mess. So I'm mostly looking forward to next year. So my goal has been to do the best I can, but if it doesn't work out, it's fine, because I'm just setting myself up to have an amazing next season. So as you can see, a lot of them have already gone to seed. I would love to save the seeds, but I don't know how, because I can't see the seeds, and so I don't know how you do that. If anybody has any advice, let me know, because I don't know. Do you like wait until the flowers die off, and then do you cut it and let it dry out and in like a paper bag, and then maybe the seeds will come out? Because I don't know. I mean, have the seeds already fallen, or have they even produced yet? I'm new to seed saving, so I don't know, but I just left them. So as long as they come up next year, then it is a success. So it would be nice to save seeds, but this year is just one of those years. So I'm happy with what I got. So these here are mostly holy basil. So these ones here that look a bit furry, these are the holy basils. I know, see, it looks a little furry. That's how I know which ones are my holy basil. And then these ones here that are nice and smooth, those are, oh my gosh, it smells so good. So that is Genovese basil. Wow, it really does smell good. And then I have some mint here. I did plant peppermint, and I also had some spearmint. So I think my pink bucket, okay, I have 2 pink buckets of mint. One of them, I believe, is spearmint. I think this one's peppermint, but I did get some mint to grow from seed, which was really nice. And that is actually one of my favorite herbs, is the mint. So I have a decent amount here. This one is tons of mints growing in here. So if they overwinter, then I'm in a good spot for next year, because these will be going in 5-gallon buckets. And then when I'm able to move, I can bring it all with me. And they've got a nice root system. And so if you did not have much success, but your stuff actually grew, even if it's just a little bit, that's okay, because you're in a better position for next year. So these here are the planters, I guess. They have a dish, like a white dish that goes underneath, but I didn't bring them everything in here yet. These here were supposed to go all along my like the rail, I don't know what you'd call it, but okay, the railing, I guess, along my front porch, and it matches the white lattice. But I didn't get the one side fully built, so this is again just mostly just setting myself up for next year. So what my plan was for this is to put some herbs in here that repel bugs, but I also found that fennel is something that repels bugs. They hate it. So what I did was some of these would have like a mint and a fennel, and then there'd be like a basil and a fennel, and that one's a mint and fennel. I also have a couple more of them. The other ones are all bee balm and then a flower, because the flowers make it look pretty, so it offsets all the green, so you get all the different colors. So I did mix some flowers in with the herbs, and it also is good for pollinators. So the fennel I'm actually going to, cut down and leave the roots in there, but I'm going to get rid of the fennel. I'm not overwintering fennel, but I think this is going to be great for next year because it saves me a lot of work and I don't have to replant them. I can just take the fennel out and maybe put some pretty flower in there for the pollinators and to make it look nice. So overall, this was a success, just not for this year. So this is pretty much just going to get me to a better start for next year. And it is like 43 right now. Let me just get out of here. So it's about 43 degrees, but the sun is absolutely gorgeous. Can you see how beautiful this sky is? No chemtrails, nothing. It is just pure blue and it is gorgeous. So I'm going to go around to the front and I'm going to show you the rest. But it's such a beautiful day. And even though it's freezing cold, as long as I'm in the sun, it feels like it's about like 70. As long as there's no cold wind, it's actually a beautiful day. So I am very excited because last year I think we already had snowstorms October 1st. So this year is just amazing. I get an extra month that I didn't get last year. So this is really nice and this is helping me. So over here, I didn't get this to look all nice and pretty like I wanted, but I did get a start to it. So I'm just doing the last minute things here that are important. Everything else is going to wait. We have 5 days that's going up to 60. So today I'm just doing the important stuff, and the next 5 days all of this is going to be all cleaned up. So this is where I started on the nice pretty side. So I have the weed shield down, then I put my 5-gallon buckets, and my manure pile is right there. That's just gonna stay there for next year. And all the lamb's quarter that's growing like crazy over it, it's just gonna add nutrients in the soil. So that's gonna decompose over the winter. It'll be loaded with snow, and the roots are gonna add lots of nutrients. So this will be pretty good manure for next year, and that's going to go in the raised bed. There's some more of those planters. I have to move them to the greenhouse. I think those are lemon balm in there. So they did well. They smell amazing. And I will say that what I noticed did the best for repelling the mosquitoes and these other biting bugs like black flies, horse flies, deer flies, sand flies, all that stuff, was dragonflies. So I don't know what it was that attracted the dragonflies, but I had seen a couple around here, and it might be because I had so much stuff I let just grow. I didn't cut any of the weeds down that are all over my gravel, and they all flowered, and I'm wondering if there's things in there that attracted the dragonflies. But I also rescued one that was stuck in my greenhouse. It kept hitting plastic and it couldn't get out. So I cut the plastic open so it could get out. And then it brought its whole family. I swear it went and got its family, because then all of a sudden, the next day, there was 8 dragonflies flying all over me, and they honestly ate every biting bug there was. And for a whole month and a half in summer, when the bugs are horrible, I didn't have any bugs. So they were really bad at the beginning of summer and through the middle, and then the last month and a half of summer, I had not one bug. They were out here, I think I saw 12 of them at once with babies, and they were just eating everything. So I did learn that if you can figure out what it is that attracts dragonflies and what they like, do it, because that will help you. The less bugs you have outside biting you, the more time you can spend in your garden, and that's super important. Oh, I hear Homestead Kitty. He'll probably make an appearance soon. There he is. Oh, he's such a handsome man. So if you hear a cat, that's Homestead Kitty. He is just a random stray from the woods that was a mean feral, but I've been working with him for a couple months and bribing him with food. And so now he's nice and he wants to be my friend, and he's constantly wanting me to pet him, and he comes and helps. So you'll probably see him out here. But I'm gonna get to the herbs that did get 5-gallon. There's my helper. Hi. Oh, thanks for helping. That's a good boy. Yeah, it's a good boy. So, and he's made best friends with my dog. He likes my dog. So he gets super excited when the dog comes out so he can go and rub up against her, even though she couldn't care less because she's kind of sick of cats. But he's a good baby. He's a good boy. So over here is the herbs that got in 5-gallon buckets. And overall, they did amazing. So I did not harvest anything from here. Again, I wanted to make sure it went to seed. We've already had many frosts. So I don't know if they're going to go to seed, the ones that have not already. So I may actually harvest something out of here because right here is my mint over here. And it looks like some spots are trying to go to seed. So I'm not sure what I'm going to do with that. But I absolutely love mint extract, and like mint tea is my absolute favorite, peppermint tea. So I may cut that down and dry it out. This here is my lemon balm, and it thrived. So all these I grew from seed. It's gorgeous. And it's dark green, it's bushy, it smells amazing. I love it. So I think I may cut that one down, and I will make, extract, tincture, same thing. So the problem I have though is it's very hard to get a 90 proof vodka here. Apparently they're only allowed to sell a certain percent. It's weird. So I have to try and find a high enough proof vodka to do this. So I've had a hard time finding Everclear, but I'm determined to do it. So if I can get a good enough alcohol, then I'm going to make a tincture out of this. But I also want to dry it out. And something that I experimented with this year is I only use coconut oil on my skin. I don't use lotion or anything like from the store. So I wanted to see if I can crush up some leaves and like fresh leaves. I'll take some fresh ones and I'll crush them up and mix it in with my coconut oil and then rub it on my skin. So that's just something I wanted to experiment with just for fun because it smells so good. So you can have a natural lotion and have a really natural fragrance because it smells so delicious. And it kind of almost is like a lemon meringue pie. So I'm just curious, instead of just using plain coconut oil, I could use that to add a fragrance, and it has a lot of medicinal benefits too. So I'm curious, but I think I'm going to cut that down. I'll dry it out and I'll save it. This here is the Genovese basil, and it looks like it did go to seed. So that's good. So I'm not going to harvest any of that. I'm just going to cut them down, put them in the greenhouse. Here's another Genovese basil. Did amazing. Yeah, that is my Genovese basil. Son, you're in the way. He's so cute. He was not like this a couple months ago. He wouldn't come anywhere near me. And if he did get a little close, he'd hiss at me like badly. And he would attack. He was not a nice kitty at all. But a little bit of love, and look at him. And he just wants to be pet. And he's such a good boy. And he gives kisses too. So this here is another lemon balm. And then this is Genovese basil. This is done. Another Genovese basil. So this is, and I have a mint here that never got planted. That's the closest I got it to repotted, was in there, but it didn't make it to one of my 5-gallon buckets. And then from last year, so last year I had some stuff that got tossed in here. That was like when I was dumping out my 5-gallon buckets just to compost the soil. I just tossed in there to compost. I didn't know that the stuff that didn't come up last year would actually come up this year. So I found a random mint and chives. So I put them in this bucket here. And what I have to do is the mint here is going to have to go in a 5-gallon bucket before I put it in the greenhouse. So I'm going to plant it and then I'll cut it. I mean, it was huge and it was gorgeous. So this one actually has gone to seed right there. See? Oh, and if you just happen to have been on My Wild Homes live last night, that's the emergency compost, or the emergency composting toilet the bear stole. So I had to move it over here, and it's going in the greenhouse. But just in case you're wondering what that was, the bear stole it, and he broke my lattice on my deck and stole it, and I found it in the yard. But anyways, so this mint smells amazing, and it's gone to seed, so that should be able to come up for next year. And anytime you can get perennials, oh, it is just one of the best things, because it's still going to save you so much work. This year I had to grow everything from seed, so it's a lot. It's a lot, because it's not just your work, but it's wondering if they're going to actually grow. Are they going to germinate? Like, how well are they going to do? So it's a great investment to get a good herb garden going of the things you're going to use as soon as possible, even if you're not ready to harvest. So if you're not ready to dehydrate or to use it for whatever you're going to use it for, that's okay. At least get your stuff started, because once you get them planted, then they should come up every year. So then the next year, when you know you're going to be ready to harvest them so that you can process them the way you want, you've already got them established. So that is a good piece of advice that I think is important for everyone. So that was my herbs, and I think they were a success, but I didn't harvest from them. Like I said, I want to make sure they go to seed, because I didn't have very much time this year. So I didn't actually harvest anything. But I think I'm going to cut my lemon balm down, and the basil that didn't go to seed, I'll cut those down and dry them out. But everything else is already gone to seed, so it's okay. It's just a good start for next year. And then for the survival seeds, here is my red Aztec kidney beans. So it's too much to have the kidney beans from the survival seeds mailed here, because they're probably just going to get crushed, and when the envelopes are a bit too puffy, it then costs a lot more to ship. So it made more sense for me to just use the red kidney beans that I already had on hand. And the ones I had are red Aztec kidney beans. So what I did was, these are just 2 seeds. So I got 2 plants in here, and I did not harvest anything from them. What I did was I just let them grow so they can go to seed. And about a week ago or so, I picked out all the ones that were already dried out, and I took all the beans out, and I got about half of a handful. That's pretty good for only having 2 plants, and I still did not pick those because they're not dry. So these are still like green. They're not ready to pick. So I still have all of these to pick. You know what? Look at this. There's one seed in here that is so cute. So typically you're supposed to let these dry out until you can shake it and they like move around. Sometimes it doesn't happen, but as long as they're really dry and crispy, then you should be okay. Problem I have is we had so much rain here that they couldn't dry out, like tons of rain. I realize now that I should have just moved into the greenhouse or covered them with plastic bag every time it was going to rain, so that they could have a chance to dry out, because they just kept getting soaking wet. There's my one seed. So that's what it looks like. Isn't that beautiful? So you definitely want to wait till they're good and dry. And I'll bring that in the house to put with my other ones. But yeah, I mean, it's beautiful. So I'm actually going to use these for next year. So, you know, this year I didn't get a harvest to actually eat. Look at them. But I did get beans for next year. So just out of 2 beans, I got half a handful of beans. That's a lot for just two plants. So I'm then going to move over here to my Mariana tomatoes, which were not Mariana tomatoes. So the ones that I got, some germinated, but then they died like right after. So I ended up finding a pack of Mariana paste tomato seeds, and I planted them, and they did amazing. Like, they grew beautiful, dark green, no bug damage on any of them. And they're heirloom, but they didn't look like Mariana tomatoes, so I don't think they were. So the tomatoes that grew on here, they didn't even get red because I didn't have enough time. So I cut these down, I think 2 weeks ago because of frost. There's really no point in leaving them when we're having frost and stuff. So what I did was I picked all the green tomatoes off and I just brought them in the house, and then I cut this down and composted it. I'm just going to dump the buckets in there, but don't pull out your roots. So if you leave your roots in the ground, it's going to put all the nutrients in your soil. So what happens is a lot of times you'll hear about, oh, this adds nutrients to your soil, this plant and this plant does this. But sometimes it's actually not while the plant's growing. The plant releases all the nutrients into the soil after it died. So like beans. It's one thing that I remember was that I think it's beans. I may be wrong. But apparently, like, I think green beans or something, they will release a lot of nitrogen, I think it is, into your soil. But they only do that after they die. So you want to make sure that when you're composting, that if you cut your plants off, compost the tops of the plants, get that all cleaned up, but make sure you leave the roots in the soil. So I'm just going to dump the whole bucket in there, but I have all of the tops of the tomatoes in one section to decompose, but the soil's going in the other section. So as far as my tomatoes, I got some and they're like beautiful, but they're not Mariana tomatoes. They look more like a slicing tomato, kind of like almost like a beefsteak. So that's okay. Now for the pepperoncini peppers, I thought I had 5, but I only found 2 with tags on it. So these 2 I know for sure are the pepperoncini peppers. But I got tons of flowers, but there just isn't enough time for them to actually grow peppers. So there's a lot of flowers, and I can actually see where they are trying to turn into peppers. So like, see here, look at that. So a lot of these flowers are just now, like, they were pollinated very well, but they're just now trying to put on a pepper, like right there. It's a little one right there. So I didn't get anything for my peppers. Oh, look at that little pepper right there. But that's okay, because if it's not too cold, you can overwinter peppers. They are perennials. So what I'm going to do is I am going to cut these down to about 6 inches tall. Make sure I take all stems and leaves off and put them in the greenhouse. And that's my experiment. I'm going to see if I can overwinter them. If so, it will be one of the greatest joys for next year, because they will already have a root system established, and as soon as they get out in the sun and it's warm, then they will just start sprouting. So I will get a huge head start next year on peppers if they overwinter, and then next year I should have a really good harvest because they would have had more than enough time to produce. So pepperoncini peppers, I didn't get anything. These are all bell peppers. I have a purple one and here's another green one I missed. He's just trying. So even the bell peppers, I did get some, but I think the tallest one was probably like 3 inches tall or 4 inches. So that really wasn't good, but that's okay because I'm just setting myself up for next year. So this is the first part of my peppers. The rest of them are all in there. And I'm just letting them get as much sun and water as they can. I'm waiting till the last minute to bring them in the greenhouse. It doesn't matter if there's frost. It's not cold enough to kill them. So that's what I will be doing next week. After the 5 days of warm temperature that we have coming, I'm going to be moving all this to the greenhouse. But for now, I'm just taking my time. So as far as the onions, I did try and they sprouted, but then they just died. But I think it's because I wasn't able to get them planted in soil in time because I didn't have it. So they did not do well, they died. And then the beets, they germinated and they looked like they were doing great. They really did. But again, my soil came over a month late. And so when it came in, I had to focus on tomatoes and then peppers. And, you know, by the time I got down the most important list, the beets died. So, and I just didn't bother replanting them because it was already so late in the season. So the beets did start to grow, and they did very well when they were in like the little seed cup, but they just died. So that was my fault because they didn't get put in the ground in time. So, you know, as far as the seeds go, they were great. And then over here, I did my butternut Waltham butternut squash. It did sprout. It was doing amazing, but again, it didn't get planted in time. So, you know, the biggest issue I had was not having the manure, because this is the only soil that I could use. The ground here is clay. It's like clay and rock. I cannot even dig a shovel in this ground. It is so hard. So I can't have a traditional garden like most people because you can't dig in the ground. So I had to order soil. So I just got manure, and it's a manure compost. So unfortunately this came over a month late, and then you can't just do all the work in one day by hand with one person in 90-degree sun. So, you know, I worked really hard every single day, filling my buckets, getting my tomatoes planted. That was most important. And then going down the line after my 30-some tomato plants are done, then peppers. And I also had to pick rocks out of here. That took like 3/4 longer in time from just being able to shovel it in a bucket. It was just really horrible. So anyways, the Waltham butternut squash, it died, but I did have some seeds, so I planted another seed and it grew me this. So here's the problem though. Again, this was planted like 2 months too late in the season, but it did still give me a squash. Now it wasn't ripe. It was still green, and I wasn't going to pick it green, so I just left it on here. And then because we had so much rain, just constant downpour of rain like last week, it split. But I wasn't going to use it anyways. It's so tiny, and it wasn't even ripe. I mean, right now it might look ripe, but it was pretty much green last week, so I don't know. I'm wondering if the seeds are good though. I might cut it open. There's a bug. Well, I might cut it open and just see, because when you're saving seeds, I was told you need to make sure that whatever you're saving the seed from is very, very ripe. So like if it's cucumbers, you want to make sure that cucumber is good and green and it is almost rotted. So same thing with tomatoes. You want good green tomatoes that are extremely ripe. So I don't know if this is going to be, it can't hurt. So I might cut this open and see if there's any mature seeds in here that I can save. And then I'll just throw this to the deer, because I actually saw 3 beautiful deers a couple days, 2 days ago. They crossed the road and went to the apple tree right over there. And they were just eating the apples off the ground. They're beautiful. So I might take this and just toss it over by the apple tree, and maybe they can eat it. So the plants that I originally grew were amazing. So my original Waltham butternut squash plant, it was beautiful. It was growing huge and dark green. It was beautiful, but it wasn't able to get planted in time. So didn't have a success with that. But again, it wasn't the poor plant's fault. So, you know, that was just one of the things that happens in gardening. So as far as the survival seeds, I covered the beans, the tomatoes, the peppers, the onions, the beets, and the squash. So unfortunately, I did not get anything other than the beans. So wasn't a success as far as the harvest. But the pepper plants, like I said, I can overwinter them. So that's a success, because that's a head start for next year. And then the squash, I might be able to get seeds out of here if they are, if they look like they're good enough that I might be able to save them. So that's not a complete failure. I might get some seeds out of here. but overall, it wasn't a success as far as harvest. Now the herbs, that's a success. Even though I didn't harvest them, I can overwinter them for next year and I get a head start on next year. But the beans, that was pretty much my only success. So I got like almost a handful of dried beans for next year. So that was good. But I've also learned a lot too. So because I can't have a traditional garden, there's Kitty on patrol. You could put the manure on the ground, and stuff like that, but I plan on selling this house next year, so I want to make sure that whatever I do, it's easy to transport it. So by having my herbs and my peppers in buckets, then I can just load it up on a trailer and I can have it taken to the new property, wherever that will be. So I try to make sure I do everything that is going to make life so much easier for me later on. So with the buckets, I did learn quite a bit. So 5-gallon buckets. What I do is I put holes in, I put holes in the bottom. I didn't drill holes in that one. But I drill holes in the bottom, but I also drill holes on the side. So like just a little bit above the bottom, put some holes around it. That way, if you get tons and tons of rain, then your bucket can easily drain all that excess water and you're not drowning your roots. Because sometimes it takes too long for water to drain out the bottom because it's right on the ground. So if it can drain out the side, that's going to help. But the problem I have with 5-gallon buckets is that they don't retain water. So I can flood a bucket with water, but it just drains right out. So what I'm going to do for next year is I'm actually going to take some of that red tuck tape. You could use duct tape, but the red tuck tape is for outdoor use, and that stuff is amazing. It's like some high-powered glue. And I'm going to actually cover up the holes on the outside of the bucket around the bottom, and I'll probably cover the holes on the bottom except maybe one. So I'm only going to have one drain hole in my 5-gallon bucket next year. That way, I'm hoping it will actually retain more water, because I had to saturate all these buckets with water every single day, and that takes a ton of time, especially when, as I'm watering, water's draining out. So that was the big, huge issue I had with the success of my plants, is if you can't get out here and spend hours just standing over each bucket and making sure it gets lots of water, like when it's like 90 degrees out, 90, something degrees outside, you need to make sure your plants have water. So every morning I come out as soon as I wake up and I'm watering my plants, or at night. Sometimes you have to do it both. And it's too much work. It's too overwhelming. And what happens if for some reason you can't do it? Then, your plants can suffer really quickly. So I think if you are in an area where it doesn't rain on a regular basis, you might want to be careful with the holes in your bucket. So I did learn that. And I also found that the biggest issue I had with pests are slugs. There's a lot of grasshoppers and crickets here, but it's mostly the slugs. And I have tons of deer. There's raccoons, skunks, fox, there's everything out here. And honestly, they never touched one thing. All of my stuff is out in the open, and it was never touched by anything. There was no animal damage at all, which is shocking, actually. But there's nothing. And I have bears. A bear actually pulled the plastic lattice off my porch on the other side and stole the composting toilet that was in the gazebo for emergencies. And I have bears. I saw the bear poop next to it. I got bears here, and they never bothered any of my plants. The deers, absolutely nothing. So the only issue I had with bugs was slugs. Every morning I come out and they're all over my stuff. They climb up the buckets and they're all over my peppers, and it's terrible. But I do know that the one thing that slugs hate and will keep them away is copper. So I personally will not put any chemicals, not even dish soap, that's chemical. I don't use any of that stuff on my plants. So I'm always trying to find natural things, and copper is amazing. One thing I did was I saved all my copper pipes from when my pipes burst in the house, and I had clear PEX pipe put in so I wouldn't have to deal with this again. It was a horrible flooding, and so I took all the copper pipes that I had taken out and I put them in my raised bed. I actually just put them like along the edge just here. I didn't get to use the raised bed this year, but I put them along the edge just for storage. And anytime I went anywhere near there, I never saw slugs up in there. And there was all kinds of random stuff growing. There was even a random pepper plant growing, but I never saw any slugs. So what I'm going to do is next year, I'm going to continue to try and find the specific gauge copper wire that you need for electroculture. I know a lot of people think, oh, you just wind it and you stick it in. No. You have to be really careful with electroculture. If you don't do it properly, it has a reverse effect. So if you do not make your electroculture copper wires a certain way, they're literally antennas. If they're not made a specific way, instead of pulling all the energy in from the air and putting it in your soil, it's actually going to take all the energy from your soil and your plants and put it in the air. So you do have to be extremely careful and make sure it's done properly. I do recommend Hill's Mill Homestead for learning how to do that. But anyways, so next year I'm going to just hopefully find the gauge. I think is it 12 gauge copper wire, I think is what I needed. I don't remember. But I want to make the copper electroculture antennas, and I want to put them in every single one of my buckets. Now, the particular ones that I will be making, I believe they work for about 3 feet, which is perfect. So I'm going to put them in every single one of my buckets. So not only is that going to pull in a lot more energy into your plants, so you get, usually you get double the size or more of your plants and your fruits and whatever it grows. But it also repels a lot of the bugs. So you're going to have greener plants and they're going to be healthier and you don't have all the bug damage. So that is something that I learned is slugs. Oh my goodness, they are horrible. And it's amazing how many there are in the morning. So it's easy to say, well, just do this to get rid of them. But the problem is they're just going to keep coming back. So if you can find a way to do something that repels them, so it doesn't matter how many there are, they're just going to leave you alone. That is like the best thing you can do. So that's what I learned with that. And I also know that with a lot of plants will do very well in 5-gallon buckets, but the more space that the plants have for their roots, the better quality you're going to get. So I find that I do fairly well with the buckets as far as my plants. They do grow fairly decent, but people just need to keep in mind that if you're able to plant in a raised bed or in the ground, then your plants have so much more space to branch out, and you're going to get taller and bigger plants, and you're going to get more of a harvest from those plants. So 5-gallon buckets is perfectly fine, as long as people know that some things need a whole lot of root space. Like, for example, you could put a seed of corn in a 5-gallon bucket and grow it. I know, because I tried. And it'll grow fairly well, but it's not going to grow anywhere like what it would grow if it was in the ground, because it needs a lot of space for the roots to branch out. So that's just something to keep in mind. If you're using 5-gallon buckets, just know that there is a big difference between that and raised beds or putting it directly in the ground. And then what I personally, if it was me, what I would like to see for next year is I'd like to see either a different variety of things or choices. So, for example, I don't eat kidney beans. I just don't. I love pinto beans. So I will pressure can my own pinto beans. I make them myself, and I add them to as much as I can. If I'm making soups, if I'm making whatever, I always do that. Or I will open up a jar, mash it all up with a potato masher, and I will mix it in with some of the things that my dog eats natural food. So I'll mix the pinto beans in with, like, if I have some mashed potatoes, I'll mix in pinto beans or other stuff to get extra nutrients. So I personally would do pinto beans because that's what I would use the most. But I think as far as beans go, it would be nice if maybe there was like two choices. So if you want to join the collaboration, you can pick, here's two choices for beans, or maybe not do beans. Since this year we did beans, maybe next year do lentils, and people can try and grow lentils, especially for those that had a successful season. Because if you've harvested all your seeds from these varieties, then you can use them next year. So if we have the same varieties next year, then people are just getting the same seeds every year. So I think it would be really nice if maybe every year it was even a different variety. So even if it's, okay, we're going to have tomatoes because, everyone should be growing tomatoes. But maybe every year do a different variety so that maybe one year you're saving seeds from Mariana tomatoes, but then next year we grow something different so we can save the seeds from that, and then we can end up with a variety of seeds. So that might be something that's would be interesting for some people. But for myself, I would say if we're doing beans, I would pick pinto beans, and I would also pick green beans or yellow beans. I would actually use green beans or yellow beans a lot more than dried beans because I do like to can, and they're something I add to soup. If I'm canning chicken soup or beef soup, I always add green beans. And I can also freeze them. They freeze very well. So green beans or yellow beans would be great. But also for a dried bean, I would say pinto beans. And then as far as the squash, honestly, I've never had squash before. I've had one little piece of squash when I had an aunt who had bought a mix of battered vegetables that you like fry them up, and there was mushrooms and stuff, and I bit into something. I'm like, what is this? It's kind of like a potato, but it has flavor. And my aunt's like, oh, that's squash. I'm like, I don't even know what squash is. So I've honestly never had squash. I only had that one little piece. So I don't know what to do with squash. I don't even know if I would like it. So I think that maybe next year it would be good to do zucchini. Now, zucchini is something that would be even better for people that have freeze dryers. So you can do so much with zucchini already. But if you have a freeze dryer, you could freeze dry it and grind, and you could powder it, and you can actually use it for flour. I have seen many people make zucchini flour, and they have said that they have not noticed a difference in things that they cook. So instead of adding flour to a lot of their recipes, they would just add the zucchini flour, and they found that it was perfectly fine. They didn't even notice a difference. So I think for people who may want wheat option, a different option for wheat, maybe that would be really good for zucchini because there's so many different ways to preserve it and use it, but it's also apparently really good for flour. So you can get away from the, your wheat, and you could maybe try and substitute zucchini flour. But not everyone has a freeze dryer. But it's just an added option because there are people that do have them. But I think zucchini would be good. It's extremely prolific. You can get so much zucchinis just off of one plant. And so I think zucchini would be a really good option instead of squash. For onions, I would say an onion that has a really good storage rate. So I don't know exactly which ones, but I know like yellow and white onions tend to store better and longer than red ones. So maybe like a yellow onion or a white onion. You could try that maybe for next year, or give people an option. So you could say, okay, well, this is the like a yellow globe onion or something, and you can either grow yellow globe onions, or you can grow some green onions, because some people may not have the space to grow like whole onions. I know there are a lot of people who have apartments and they only have a balcony, or maybe some people don't even have a balcony and they just have a tiny little space to grow. So if they can put a container in a windowsill, they could easily grow some green onions. So that might be nice to give people an option for onions, maybe offer 2 different varieties. Or maybe like with beets. I personally don't eat beets, and I grew up eating pickled beets. I absolutely love them. Love pickled beets, love dill pickles, green olives, but the problem is that vinegar is a neurotoxin. So as much as I love all those foods, I do not eat vinegar anymore. And I try to stay away from pickled things, but every so often, I just like to have some pickles. So I will eat them sometimes, but I do try really hard to stay away from anything with vinegar. So for me, beets, I did try them once cooked and it was gross. So I think if I knew how to cook beets where it would taste good, then it would be different. But as of right now, I don't know how to cook beets so that they would taste good. So I personally would not, use beets. But I do know that the leaves apparently are really good, that you can use them like lettuce. So that is something good. That's a good option. So for me, beets would not be the best choice of something to grow. I would love to see carrots. So I think maybe instead of beets, people could have a choice. So you could have beets and carrots. You can say, okay, you can have your choice. Do you want to grow beets or do you want to grow carrots? So I think that would be nice. Oh, these are all rotten. So that's my suggestion for maybe having an alternative. So some people, like I said, some people might, love growing beets or squash. So maybe give them an option. If you want to grow those, you could do that for the collaboration. But for the people that don't like them and they're not going to use them, then you can have a different option. And maybe just give like an option. So you can pick one or the other. And let me see, did I miss anything? Peppers. Oh, okay. So for the peppers, I don't know. I personally don't like anything hot or spicy. I like flavor, but I don't like heat. So I think standard bell pepper would be good, but maybe like each year have a different variety. So a bell pepper, and then maybe another year have like a salad pepper, which would be maybe one year you could have just a green pepper. Another year you could do a yellow sweet banana pepper. So it's a different kind of pepper. And then you're getting a little variety on seeds. I know people say, oh, seeds are only good for a year. If they're stored properly, you would be shocked how long you can save your seeds for. So if we grow something different each year, then we're building up a good seed storage. So I think for peppers, maybe next year, like a different kind of pepper, maybe a bell pepper. Now, you could give an option too, because a lot of people do like the hot stuff. So I personally, next year, I want to grow cayenne peppers just so I can make my own cayenne pepper. And that's just for health benefits. I don't eat cayenne pepper because I don't like heat, but it's just good for health benefits. So I personally will be trying to grow that. I don't like jalapeno, anything, but I do love salsa. But I like a salsa that is mild. So again, I like flavor, but I don't like heat. So jalapeno would be good, because I was told as long as you take all the seeds out, and on the inside where you have it looks like white flesh. You know, when you're cutting up a bell pepper, you get that flesh where the seeds are attached. As long as you remove all of that and then you cut it up, you don't have the heat. So it's not just the seeds, but you also want to remove that fleshy part inside. So that might be a good option. But again, like as far as jalapenos, not everyone likes heat. So the only thing I would use a jalapeno in would be salsa because I don't like heat. But cayenne pepper, I would use that for seasoning or for a spice. So here's the other option I don't know what you call it, but my advice or whatever. So I would recommend that next year we have different varieties so people can start building up a good seed storage, and maybe also some choices in the varieties. So even if we're just going to do tomatoes, maybe give 2 different varieties. Some people, they may only have a small space, so it makes more sense for them to grow cherry tomatoes because they're going to grow faster, they're going to ripen faster, and you end up getting more of a harvest because you're not waiting all that time for one big tomato. So you can start eating them sooner or preserving them sooner, but you can toss them in the freezer. So I think cherry tomatoes would be a good option because some people it may not be the best choice for them to grow like a large tomato. So cherry tomatoes would be a good option. So maybe you can pick, if you want to grow tomatoes, you can do a cherry, like a piece fine cherry tomato. Those are loaded with more nutrients than regular ones. Or maybe we did Mariana paste tomato, so maybe this year it could be like a Amish paste tomato, or so you can have your choice. And then something that I think would be good is to maybe have a spice section. So maybe we could try something for spice. So part of the collaboration, you could try and grow cumin. That's an easy seed to find, and you can harvest and make your own cumin. Or like cayenne peppers, or something where we can actually grow our own spice. Spices are actually, I think, one of the most expensive foods, and like out of everyday foods people eat, spices are really expensive. So if we can start growing our own spices, that might be good too. So I would suggest maybe having an option for some kind of spice. And I don't know. I mean, there's so many things that we should be growing that are multi-purpose, but maybe also have a fruit option. I know some people, it's harder to grow a fruit because you're in the north, but I think it'd be nice to have like a couple of vegetables, and then maybe a bean, and then a spice and an herb, at least one herb, and then a fruit option. Now, growing a strawberry plant from seed, yeah, you could do it, but you're probably not going to get a harvest that year. So maybe for some people, like rhubarb. I actually grew rhubarb from seed. Now again, rhubarb takes several years, but the sooner you start establishing your fruits, then the sooner you're going to start getting a harvest. And especially when it's something that's growing back every single year, you're actually building yourself a nice little food forest. So maybe it'd be an option. For some people, watermelons do well. So you can have an option, maybe watermelon. And if somebody's like, oh, I can grow watermelon, maybe add that. So you have like a fruit to the seed collaboration. But for some people that may say, okay, well, I only have like 90 days in the summer and I'm not gonna be able to successfully grow a watermelon or any kind of fruit like that. Well, maybe you could do a rhubarb. Yeah, you're not gonna be able to harvest it that year, but at least you're getting started. So I'm trying to think what other fruits you could actually grow that you might get a harvest that year in the northern climates. And I think watermelon's the only one that comes to mind. But yeah, maybe add like a watermelon, or maybe rhubarb, or even strawberry seed, So it's just an option. And maybe add like a grain. So I've actually seen some people try to grow their own wheat in a raised bed, because we all know almost all the wheat you get in the store, it's all been sprayed with, Roundup or Grazon. So if you can grow your own wheat berries and you store them properly, I think they're good for 20 some years or something. They're very good for long-term storage. So and they're really small seeds. They can easily be sent in the mail. So I was thinking maybe offer to people, like, you can grow, if you want to try, you can grow wheat berries. So we have like a little bit of a variety. You can grow like a spice, you can grow wheat, so you can grind up your own wheat into flour. And I don't know. The thing is with corn, is heirloom corn, so much better than the corn you buy in store, because it's 90% of the corn products in store are GMO. So being able to grow heirloom corn would actually be great. But the seeds are big and heavy, so I'm also trying to factor in like mailing. I don't think corn would be a good option because the seeds, but some wheat seeds, maybe some cumin or cayenne pepper for your spices. They're small seeds. Watermelon is a little big, but it's not that bad. They actually ship fairly well. So squash seeds, they ship well, even though they're large, or zucchinis. So I think it is important to also factor in shipping. The bigger and heavier the seeds, the harder it is to ship at a reasonable cost. So overall, I think that the varieties that were chosen were great, because I actually love all of them except the kidney beans. And like I said, I do love beets. It's just I don't eat pickled beets anymore. So the choices were great overall. Like I said, with beets, you can use the leaves. So it is a great choice. But for me, I would have different varieties of things, because it's just based on what I would use. And I also think that it's important to also factor in preserving. Like, for example, I don't think cucumbers would be really good for survival seeds. Now, if you are somebody who makes pickles, then yeah, that's great, because you can preserve them. But it's not something that freezes well. So, cucumbers, it's just not something that I would say is a good option. But something like zucchini, you can can it, you can freeze it, I've never dehydrated. So maybe you could dehydrate it and then make a flour. But if you have a freeze dryer, you could freeze dry it and turn it into flour. So I like things that are multi-purpose, and they have different ways of preserving them. So, overall, I think it was awesome. I enjoyed it. It was my first collaboration, and I thought it was very well done, and it was enjoyable. I actually had fun, and I enjoyed it. So I look forward to the videos that people put out, because I've learned a lot from it too. So, I look forward to watching people's videos, and I also like the weekly updates. So that's fun too, because there's a lot of information in those lives as well. And I think that's pretty much it. But, I thought it was enjoyable. I think it was very well done. And I think what made it even more fun and exciting for people is that there's giveaways. And it doesn't matter, what they really are. It's just fun to add some giveaways. It's just fun. So I think next year will be an amazing year. And, I think if everyone's able to donate something, even if it's just like a couple packs of seeds, because you can mail out 1 pack of seeds with a stamp. I think if everyone donated something, doesn't have to be expensive, then it just adds to it being more enjoyable and more fun. And who doesn't love seeds? So yeah, I think it's great. And I do think that, the giveaways, it's not like important or, a requirement or anything like that. But I just think that it just makes it more enjoyable and fun. So who doesn't love giveaways? So I think the giveaways are so much fun, and I'd like to see them for next year as well. But I think that's pretty much it. Now, I don't know if it's just supposed to be vegetables, but I do think that maybe it'd be a nice option to also add a flower. So having a garden is great, but your pollinators are also extremely important too. So for me, I try to make sure I'm planting flowers. I have never seen so many bees in my life, and I didn't even have that many flowers. But my sunflowers, the wind pulled them out of the ground and threw them. So my sunflowers, yeah, they're done. But I had bees constantly on my sunflowers all summer long, and there was like several bees at all times on each one of my sunflowers. And I had my nasturtiums, and I had so many bees flying around. I've never seen so many ever. So I think maybe it might be good to also add some kind of pollinator. Now, my personal favorite is my nasturtiums. I've harvested most of the seeds, but I love nasturtiums because they are amazing for pollinators. There is bees all over here all the time for the flowers. The bees love nasturtiums. But nasturtiums are also edible. I've seen people add the nasturtium leaves to their salt, and they chop them up and add it to their salt. And apparently it adds a peppery flavor to your salt. So your salt will taste kind of like salt and pepper, even though it doesn't have pepper. But you can eat the leaves, and also a lot of the bugs that will typically go and attack some of your plants, I think like squash and other things. A lot of these bugs that attack your garden plants prefer nasturtiums. So if you have nasturtiums and you plant them near your garden but a little bit away from your garden, then you're encouraging those bugs to go to your nasturtiums and, eat your nasturtiums and stay away from your garden plants. So nasturtiums, I think, would be an awesome addition to the survival seeds because you have your pollinator. Yeah, it's also edible, and it's a bug repellent. Now, the problem is, the seeds can be a little bit big, but honestly, they're not that bad. For shipping, they're not that bad. So another thing too is the ease of saving seeds. So what I do is I let them go to seed. Looks like this. Now, I think, to me, this is small. I try to let them grow as big as possible, and when they get really big, then that's when I pick them. I was trying to find one to show you on the size that I like to pick them at, but I think I picked them all already. But yeah, nasturtiums are so easy to save seeds. So you can pick them at any size, really. I just like to wait till they get really big. But, this one fell off. Okay. So after this flower dies, it'll then put on seeds. Usually there's 3. So sometimes there's 2, but it's supposed to look like this. So you get 3 seeds. And you can pick that off at any time. I would just like to let them get as big as possible. But you pick them off, and then you just put them on a dish and let them dry out. And when they turn brown, that usually means they're dried out. So when this turns brown, you just pack it away for next year. And then all you do is you go like this and you rub it, and all that brown dried skin comes off, and the seed is inside of here. So nasturtiums are one of the easiest things to save seed from, and it's prolific. This is one seed. So this is a nasturtium I put in a hanging basket, and it grew from one seed. But I have got 2 handfuls of seeds I've already harvested this year from this one nasturtium seed. I mean, I'm using seeds from last year, and I still have a whole bunch. So nasturtium is an excellent option for a pollinator flower. So, I think there's so many options. It's just a matter of, shipping. So if you can add maybe a spice and a fruit and maybe wheat, so you have a grain that you can make into flour, and maybe a pollinator plant, that'd be good to consider. And I think that's pretty much it. So overall, I had a great time, and he's still on patrol. So absolutely, I just want to thank everyone who put this together and made it a success, because it really was a success, and I'm excited for next year. So hopefully I will see everyone next year, and it will be so much better than this year. and I am going to get this posted and then get started on my work for today. I picked up a 50-pound bag of deer carrots yesterday for $15. So I got to sit out here and peel 50 pounds of carrots and get them chopped and put in the freezer so I can use them for my canning this week. So I have a lot of work to do, and I will see you on the next video. So again, I had an amazing time. Thank you so much for putting this together, and I look forward to next year. And I still have a bee flying around. I don't know if you can see it. It's still flying around. There's bees still looking for all the flowers and stuff. So I'll see you on the next video.